Hello everyone. This is the fourth and last session of our 4-module book study on the ASELDS. If you were unable to join us for the live presentation, I'd encourage you, after you listen to this presentation, to hop on over to Canvas and take a look at the resources that are available for you there, as well as the wonderful information that participants added into chat. You can find that in the discussion boards. While we were waiting for everyone to get on the webinar, we talked about literacy and the types of books that can be used to expand children's learning across all the domains. And in chat, we heard about The Napping House, Stay Cool in School. Nedra talked about a book that she uses that works really well with families and children called Mouse is Mad. And Jennifer shared a great way that she incorporates all the domains as she is working on a project with fairy tales. So these things are all housed on our discussion boards, and I'd encourage you to go in and look and, of course, add your own. I'm Sue Mitchell, the host for this session, and by now you've heard from all of our wonderful facilitators who you see listed on this slide. If you'd like to take a look at their bios or contact information, that is in Canvas for your benefit. In our previous 3 modules, we have gone through all of the child-focused domains and looked at them, the content, and some of the ways that they can be pulled together to support children's learning. Today, we're going to move into the additional resources that are available throughout the ASELDS document, beginning with that first programmatic domain, family and community engagement, and then we'll take a look at the resources within each domain, the crosswalks and alignments, and the appendices. Just as with the other modules, we're going to start with a game. Today we're going to play Jeopardy! And you could find a little Jeopardy! Board, a handout, again in Canvas. If you want to use it as you play along, you have the opportunity to win thousands of dollars, and if you get to Final Jeopardy! You can win $1 million. So we have done this as a poll, and I will go through each question and pause, giving you a chance to think about how you would answer each one of these questions, or I should say answer each one of these answers in the form of a question. Here's the first one, and the answer is, its acronym is ASQ. So what is that acronym? What does it stand for? I'll pause a minute, give you a chance to think about it. The answer to that one is Ages and Stages Questionnaire. Let's move to the next. This answer tells us this practice can be successful when teachers have strong knowledge about child development and a belief that all children can learn. What is that practice? I'll wait a minute. The answer is inclusion. Let's look at the next one. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics are in this ASELDS section. I'll pause. The answer is STEM skills can be found in Section 3, Exploration and Critical Thinking. And those STEM skills, science, technology, and engineering, those 3 are embedded within the science domain, and mathematics is its own domain. Let's look at the next one. A professional who joins a national early childhood organization is doing this. And you could find that answer in the appendices. I'll pause. The answer to this is they are doing advocacy. And one of the ways that you can join an organization, or one of the organizations, might be NACE, National Association for the Education of Young Children. Let's move on. The Head Start Parent, Family, and Community Engagement Framework is aligned with this ASELDS document. And I'll give you a hint. It's in the crosswalks and alignments. So the answer is the Family and Community Crosswalk. And Head Start's provided wonderful resources that guided much of the content in the ASELDS, and in particular, their framework for family and community engagement was wonderful to inform our work. Here's another one that can be found in the appendix. We talked about it last week if you were on our live session. The answer is the minimum amount of unstructured play for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. The answer for this one is 60 minutes. That's the minimum recommended time that comes out of the American Academy of Pediatrics. And here's our last one. If you were looking at the little handout, you would see this is Final Jeopardy. It's for $1 million. So what are, or here's the answer, expectations about what children should know, learn, and do? Hopefully you got this answer correct and you won $1 million. This is, what are learning standards? Hopefully you're a little richer now for playing our Jeopardy game. And we're going to move on to take a look at that programmatic domain, the family and community engagement domain. And we know that family and community engagement is really important. It's important to create those partnerships between programs and families. And our particular domain emphasizes those partnerships. It also offers strategies for all of you as you work to really make those homeschool connections, especially in these days of COVID where so many children are doing virtual learning. It offers ways to engage families in the life of a program and emphasizes those strategies that connect programs and families with the community to support children's success and offer services for them. Here we go. This is the first page of the family and community engagement domain. And you can see it looks just like the other child-focused domains. So this is the intro page. You'll see that the tagline for this domain is connections to help me succeed. And just like the others, there are a couple of paragraphs that describe the domain and the content. There is the did you know, and then the table of contents at the bottom. So you can see that this is just like the other domains. Let's take a look at the 3 subdomains that are within family and community engagement. And the first one is family partnerships. And within there, you're going to see child development and parenting and communication, the homeschool connection, and family participation. So these different strands describe the way in which we as professionals and program leaders can involve or engage families in our everyday workings of the program and how children are learning. The next subdomain is program climate and environment. And this one speaks to the way in which we design our environments and interact with our families, whether they feel welcome. So when a family member walks into your school or your program, do they see themselves there? Are their cultures and values reflected? And are they comfortable in leaving their children there every day? And then the last subdomain is community partnerships. And this is how we as professionals really need to have some strong knowledge and understanding of the community in which our children live and the types of services and resources that are available there. When we look at the actual standards pages, this is where you can see that they look a little different than our child-focused domains. And when you look at the top, that first row set of bullets, these are the program practices. And this is what we would encourage programs to put into practice, to design programs around that really support each of the strands. So this strand that we're looking at is child development and parenting under family partnerships. The next set of bullets are policies and practice. So had your program, or if your program uses or has designed your program with the policies in mind, this is how it might look in your particular program or classroom. And then last are the family's experiences. And if you were a family member and you were able to benefit from the policies around your program's child development and parenting, how would you feel? What kinds of experiences would you be having? And again, how would it make you feel as a parent? Here is the first breakout of the day, so I'm going to explain it to you and give you a few minutes to think it through, and then I'll come back and describe one or two of the ideas that were shared in the live program. So each of the breakouts had an assigned strand, and they were asked to discuss the ways in which programs address those policies that are suggested. They were asked to share a specific idea or situation, and then also to talk about the challenges that programs or you as professionals have when you are trying to adopt or use the particular policies for each of the strands. So I'm going to pause a minute and give you a chance to think about that. Let's talk a minute about some of the shared ideas that we got in chat or through our facilitators' breakout sessions. Transition came up a lot across many of the different domains, and how the policies that are recommended in ASELDS really support and help all of you as professionals have good transition practices that help both children and families. Another idea that was shared was take-home bags, where teachers or professionals provide activities for children to do with families, with parents, and then bring back to school as a way of making that homeschool connection. We also heard about a lot of creative ways that professionals are using Zoom or virtual social media kinds of things to engage families. And one person talked about how she reads books onto her own YouTube channel and then shares them for families. So I'm sure you have many ideas too of how you can either put these policies into practice or how you already have done so. That family and community engagement domain took us through all of the domains, and so now we're ready to go into the resources a little bit to explore them. And we're going to start with looking at the different resources or information that are provided in the actual domain sections within the domain pages. We can start with that very first page, the title page. And when you look at this, we are looking at the language and literacy page. You can see that there's a paragraph that describes the domain. So it gives you some basic information that you can use yourself to further your knowledge or to share with family members. That did you know is just a little tidbit or a snippet of information about a specific aspect of the domain. In this one, we're looking at the numbers, the different types of questions that you can ask kids. So we know that open-ended questions are important, but did you know that there are many different ways to ask open-ended questions? And that's available for you here. So those are just two pieces just on that first page of the domains that offer some information for you. When we look at the standards pages themselves, you'll see that we have children's observable actions here, and this gives everyone an idea of what it might look like if the child is mastering or demonstrating the skills that are listed above in the indicators. And we talked about this early on, or even in the introductory sessions. These are just a set of examples. They're not an extensive list. I know that you have been able to observe many more in different ways that children show these skills. This just gets you started thinking about it and provides, just as I said, a sampling. You also get a sampling of professional practices on every domain or standards page linked to the strand. Here you get a sampling, a set of examples of ways in which we as professionals can set up our environment or interact with children or design activities, all of which relate back to the strand. In this case, we're looking at self-awareness. So every page in the ASELDS standards has these resources for you. When we get to the end of each of the standards domains, you'll see two different pages. And this is the first one. This is adaptations and accommodations for children with unique needs. And we specifically talk about this as unique needs because while we often think of children with disabilities as needing adaptations and accommodations, so too may dual language learners or children with emotional or behavioral challenges. We need to adapt our teaching and interactions for all kinds of unique needs. And our colleagues from the Department of Special Ed put these pages together for us and give us the kinds of adaptations we might make for each of the domain topics. So you can see that we are offering some suggestions for daily schedules and routines, for the environment, for materials, and then the way in which we design our instruction and activities. At the end of, or at the bottom of each of our adaptations pages, here's another little snippet that can be used to wet your whistle if you want to find out more information about something specific to the domain. You could use these, pull these out, and use them with families as well. Our last page in the domain sections is a sampling of foundational practices. And here we've got, again, ways that we can modify or expand, add to our classrooms to support the learning that happens in this particular domain. So I can tell by the color here that this one is physical development and health, and we have information on instruction, environment, and then we have added a whole list of children's books that help children learn about, in this case, physical development and health. We've also given you some adult resources, professional resources that you could access if you want to know more about how to further engage children in physical development and health. And then last, here you see again our focus on family engagement and ways in which we can now get into the specific domain and build our partnerships with families. We heard many different ways in which the participants might use these resources. In particular, we heard about the children's books that are included on the foundational practices pages, how they may really be helpful in promoting different ideas and aspects of learning. And one person even suggested that you work with your library to make sure that some of those titles are available to you. We also heard about those little snippets, the did you know, or those thumbtacked ideas that are at the bottom of the adaptations pages, that they might be able to be used for newsletters to offer just some basic information to families. And then last, we heard many of the participants tell us how excited they are to see the adaptations and accommodations pages, and that's really going to help them take a look at their environment and their scheduling and their activities and instruction to be inclusive for all children. We're going to move now to the back of the ASELDS document and take a look at the crosswalks and the alignments that have been created. They were developed to demonstrate the way in which the ASELDS are meaningful and user-friendly for all of our different early learning programs: home visitors, childcare, Head Start, first class, special education. Everyone can see themselves in the ASELDS because of the crosswalks. The crosswalks emphasize that important linkage between the ASELDS and other standards that early learning programs may need to be using or impact us as professionals. At the same time, they can give us some comfort that when we are adopting the ASELDS, we are able to use them to meet our requirements for our other programs, and then they help us to see that trajectory that begins with our babies and goes straight through second grade thanks to the alignments. So we're going to take a look at each one of these now. This first one is the Head Start alignment. I apologize that they're so small. And you can see that on the left, there are the Head Start outcomes that are included in the Head Start Outcomes Framework. If you're in Head Start, you know that guides the work that you do with children. On the right, you can see the ASELDS and how they align with the Child Outcomes Framework. So it's quite clear that if you use ASELDS, you are meeting the requirements for Head Start and then some. You can see there's additional content that's in the ASELDS. The same holds true for the DHR guidelines. We did have some colleagues who created this crosswalk for us that goes domain by domain and shows how the ASELDS are linked directly with the DHR guidelines for children. Next, you'll see Family and Community Engagement Framework, and this relates to the different requirements that our programs have for families. So Head Start, of course, has really strong values and practices related to family engagement, but you'll find them in first class pre-K and in childcare, home visiting, of course, and special ed as well. And so we took a look at different program requirements specifically around family engagement. This next one is the link to our courses of study in Alabama. This is what provides that learning trajectory that starts at birth and takes us all the way through second grade. So for each of the domains, you see ASELD is on the left, and then how the ASELD's requirements or standards line up with kindergarten, first and second grade content. And you'll see again as you look at this just sample page that there's really good continuity and alignment across them. And when we think about these courses of study in particular, they're helpful for us as early learning providers and professionals because it helps us to understand what children will be learning and what our higher grade teachers will be focusing in on. but it also helps them look backward to understand what their children are coming to school with and what we as early learning professionals have been working with children on. So this particular set of alignments to courses of study gives you that forward, back, and looking backward and forward opportunity. There's one more crosswalk, and that was created by Teaching Strategies for the alignment of gold to the standards for early learning for the ASELDS. So you can find this on the website, and for those of you that are using gold, this will help you understand how you use the standards to support your instruction that then guides your assessment for children. Following the crosswalks and alignments is yet another section, and this is the appendices. So I should have said in the crosswalks pages that each one of them is available independently on the DECE website. You can print each one out separately, or you can print out all the alignments together as its own little package deal. They can be separated from the actual standards. And this is the same case for the appendices. We're going to look at them in a minute, but each one of them is available to be printed out by itself, or all of them to be printed together so that you can focus in on one of these ideas and not have to use the full document to get to this information. The appendices provide you with some research on really key early childhood topics. So we wanted to take them a little bit further than the snippets or the information that you saw within the actual domain pages. These give you more information. They can be used for a foundation for you as you're looking at your own practices or your program's practice. They can also be used as discussion topics for colleagues if you have your own book studies or information studies, and they can provide you with the research and knowledge you might need to interact with community members, business leaders, and or our families. We're going to take a look at these individually now, and again, I'm sorry that they're so small. The first one is the wonder of play. Hopefully by now you've seen that play has been just spread all the way through the domains, the ASELD document, and then we took it one step forward by offering you some research around why play is so important for children. The next one, it actually has the wrong photo here. It's the same picture, but the actual appendix is stages of development. And this goes through the varying stages for writing or for drawing or for play, the way in which children start one place and then gradually move through their emerging skills. So this would be very helpful if you're trying to understand where a child is and how you can scaffold the child's learning and take it back and look at it in conjunction with the actual standards. The next one is an appendix on inclusion, how Alabama promotes and encourages inclusion. This particular appendix was written by our friends in the Department of Special Education. Next is an appendix on dual language learners. It provides research about the way in which we as professionals should interact with young dual language learners, and also gives us some of the key ways in which children progress through stages as dual language learners. The next one talks about physical activity. So if you think back to our Jeopardy question on 60 minutes for unstructured play, that information can be found here, along with a lot of other recommendations that are broken into the different age ranges. So how we involve our infants and then our toddlers and then preschoolers in physical activity. The next one is technology. And no surprise how important this particular research paper is for all of us now, as we are actually reaching about a year of virtual learning for our children. Hopefully we've come to better understandings ourselves. This particular document gives you the research and recommendations on things like screen time for each of the ages, and then some ways in which we can appropriately use technology in our programs. The next one talks about us as advocates. And we have a really important function in providing advocacy or doing advocacy for our children and our families and then ourselves as professionals. And so this particular research page talks about the ways in which we do advocate for our early childhood profession. The last of these research documents is around equity, a very important topic which has gotten a lot of focus in recent years. And instead of creating this one ourselves, doing the research ourselves, we went right to the source and took the position statement from NACE on equity. So I would encourage you to read that in full. Then we have a couple other appendices. This first one is a glossary which explains a lot of the different terminology that we use, the lingo, our early childhood lingo. And so you may have heard something and not quite sure how it's defined or what it means. You could go to the glossary to better understand. There are general terms, and then each of the domains includes a glossary. Next are the resources or references that were used by the committee as they were designing the ASELDS. You'll see there's just tons of them, and they are divided into general resources as well as each of the domains resources. Last, this one came at the request of many different people who were with us during our rollout presentations. They asked for a list of acronyms. I think of early childhood as just, we run rampant with all of our acronyms. We have so many of them, and this offers explanations for each of them, some on a national or more global perspective, and then others that are specific to Alabama. We're going to stop here now and do what would have been our third breakout. This one is asking you to look at or think about those 5 crosswalks that we looked at, Head Start, DHR, Family and Community Engagement, the Courses of Study, and Gold, as well as those appendices, that started with play, moved on to stages of learning, dual language learners, inclusion, technology, physical activity, advocacy, and equity. I feel like I'm missing one, but all of the different appendices, think about, choose one of those, and how might you use them with first parents and families, then with early childhood colleagues, and last with community and business leaders. So I'll pause a minute and then we'll come back and share some of what was put into chat. Some of the information we heard or suggestions we heard through the breakouts included people looking at the appendix on inclusion and how valuable the specific and concrete ideas are that are in there to guide their look at environment and activities to support children with unique needs. We also heard from one person about the advocacy appendix and how she had never thought of herself as an advocate when she belonged to a professional organization, and how valuable that information was in opening her eyes to ways in which she can advocate. We heard for the crosswalks that in particular those courses of study alignments will be really helpful when professionals are looking at transitions for children as they're moving from pre-K into kindergarten and beyond. And overall, what we heard was that the crosswalks will be a wonderful way in which to encourage sharing across programs. So professionals from like Head Start could be talking with professionals in first class pre-K with some common language and common expectations. Final reflections on today really focus on the way in which the ASELDS is so much bigger than an actual standards document, and how there are resources and wonderful ideas that are intertwined, entrenched throughout the document to help you work with children. And in effect, it actually makes your lives easier because it gives you so many examples and specific ways in which you can design environment and activities and scaffold children's learning. So while it may be intimidating when you first look at this big ASELD document, you can break it down and pull out the standards, but also pull out all of these wonderful resources, use them alone or together as you work with young children. We'll take a minute now to look at the program practice activities for this week. If you haven't tried them, I would encourage you to look at all of them for each of the modules, even if you don't want to submit them for professional development credit. They strengthen your understanding of the ASELDS. They help you dig in and get more familiar with them so that when you are actually incorporating the ASELDS into your lesson plans, it will be a snap. You'll have already been familiar with them through these different program practice activities. If you want professional development credit for them, you can submit them online through Canvas, or if that offers some challenges, you can attach them in an email or be in touch with your facilitator who will work with you for a way in which you can submit those. So let's take a look. The first one is that one on family and community engagement, and it asks you to just think about your own practices and your program's practices. And do you feel like you do that well, or are there ways in which you could expand that? Or you identify a new strategy as you look through those standards. The next one is to explore the appendices. So think about if you were making a presentation, you had to stand up in front of a group of parents or colleagues and talk about a key topic. So pick one of the appendices. How would you introduce that topic? What key information from the appendix would you pull out and use? And then if you needed even more information, where might you go to find that? As always, you can obtain professional development credit for your participation if you have logged on for the bulk of each of the 4 sessions and submitted the short survey or assessment at the end of the module. You will get 1.5 hours for each of the modules. If you complete those program practices that we just looked at and submit them, you will get an extra 30 minutes of credit or 2 hours of credit for each of for the full set of modules. So all in all, you could get 8 hours of professional development for completing both the presentations and the program practice. These need to be completed by March 1, and the resources that are housed within Canvas, you'll find in each of the 4 modules. There are folders with different resources, research, and other practice papers related to the domains and the content. You may access any of those, download them, and keep them in your own personal files. They will be available for you until March 15th. As we close out this final session, I would encourage you to pause for a few minutes and think about the ASELDS, the book study, and what you might have learned. So something new that you might have learned about the ASELDS, something new you might have learned about child development or the content within the ASELDS. Identify something that you might want to explore further in the ASELD document. And then last, think about how you might begin to put those ASELDs into practice when you walk back into your program either tomorrow or next week, or as you think about your next school year. Thank you for viewing this session, our last module of the book study, and for viewing all 4 of the book study modules. I would encourage you to continue to look through the Canvas materials to further your exploration and see how the perspective of others, and hope that you will continue to stay in touch with us as we learn how you are putting the ASELDS into practice. Thanks so much.